Hello, this is Dr. Bortle, and I am going to review some basic APA conventions. The intention here is to keep these relatively short, so in this first session I'm going to just talk about the basic formatting of the paper. I'm going to talk about headings, and I'm going to talk about references and citations. I'm going to burn through this pretty quickly, the idea being you can always play this back to review it at any time. We have here in front of us an APA formatted paper. It's a very straightforward format. It is not particularly interesting. There is a running head at the top, so you'll have to learn how to do headers and footers in Microsoft Word. See a corresponding Microsoft Word educational presentation that will go through the specifics of how to do those things. Every APA paper needs a cover page. The cover page should have the title of the paper. It should have your name without credentials, and it should have the date that the paper was submitted. And that's all that goes on the cover page. No pictures, no fancy fonts, no anything else. You'll notice the entire paper is in Times New Roman 12 point. You do not have the option to change fonts and sizes for emphasis in an APA paper. So on the first page of the paper, which is page number 2 after the cover, you have the title exactly the way the title appeared on your cover page. That is not bolded, not italicized, not underlined. Just copy the title off your cover page and paste it in right here. Then you start with a couple of paragraphs of introductory material. Note that APA does not use a heading called introduction. The first couple of paragraphs of your paper are assumed to be the introduction. So I've already mentioned that we have a header up here, a running head with the page number. And then the rest of the paper, you'll notice, is formatted in a very standard way. The margins are 1 inch all the way around. You'll probably have to change that. Your Microsoft Word document is usually set to a default of 1.25 inch margins. You will notice that we're in Times New Roman 12 point double spaced. This is your spacing bar here, and we're set to 2. The whole paper is left justified. You don't use full justification or right justification. You left justify your paper. And we have a 1/2 inch hanging indent. Now a hanging indent is accomplished by going to the ruler. If you can't see your ruler, go to the view screen and click ruler on. The ruler's now off. I put a check mark under ruler here, under view, and we see the ruler. Now, after the paper's already written, you have to highlight something to change the ruler. If you set the ruler before you ever start writing, then everything will follow those ruler settings. So we could change the indent here to anything we wanted by just moving this little top bar on the ruler. And when we put that to a 1/2 inch, you get a 1/2 inch hanging indent. When you get to doing your references have a reverse indent, and your references will be set like that. So I'll just run down to the reference page quickly. References begin flush left, and then I have a 1/2 inch indent on any subsequent lines for that given reference. And again, that stuff is easily manipulated with the ruler. So the bulk of the paper is set to flush left margins, 1/2 inch hanging indent. You shouldn't use the tab mark to do these, the tab key rather, to do these indents. You should set the hanging indent with the ruler. And if you don't know how to do that, you should learn how to do that. It's relatively simple, and it will save you a lot of aggravation later on. An APA paper is subdivided using headings. Okay, so each heading, we have a level 1 heading, a level 2 heading, and a level 3 heading. These have changed from the previous version of APA. The APA 6th edition headings are all still in Times New Roman 12. They are bolded, and so a level 1 heading is centered, and I don't know if I have any level 1 headings here. Let's see if the conclusion should be bolded. A level 1 heading is centered, Times New Roman 12, bolded. A level 2 heading is flush left, Times New Roman 12, bolded. And then a level 3 heading is 1/2 inch indent. Don't have a level 3 heading in this paper, but if we wanted to have under Urban Wildland Interface a couple of subheadings, they would be the same thing here, only indented a half an inch. There is a benefit to using these headings that we'll talk to when you're writing very long papers. If you actually use style sheets to run these headings, again, see the corresponding Microsoft Word document. You can have Word create a table of contents for you, and it'll just take all your level 1 headings and make them the table of contents, or all your level 1 and level 2 headings and make them the table of contents. So if you have previously defined those heading styles, it does give you a little bit of more functionality when you get advanced. Is there anything wrong with just going through and bolding the things yourself or indenting them using the tab key? No, there's nothing wrong with that. You can do that. My point here is that your paper is broken down. A long paper might have a couple of level 1 headings for the major sections. Literature search, discussion, conclusion. Those would be level 1 headings, which would be centered and bolded. Level 2 headings then define the way you're going to break up any given section. And if you need level 3 headings to further subdivide those sections, you would use the level 3 headings. I want to spend just a couple of minutes to talk about one of the other major differences in APA, which is the references and citations. A reference is at the end of the paper in the section of the paper titled References that lists all of the materials that you referenced. That might be journals, that might be web pages, that might be textbooks or books. APA does referencing based on the author's last name and the date. There is a very specific reference style, and it is different for textbooks and journals and web pages and a whole host of other things, videos and congressional documents and dissertations and you name it. The APA textbook will go into great detail with you, as does the APA template that we provide you as to how to do those references. My point now is that the references are the things at the end. Every reference has to have an author. An author is typically a person, but an author might be an organization. But there has to be an author. Your reference can't just be the name of an article. Someone wrote that article, whether it was a person, whether it was a committee, whether it was a company, or whether it was Newsweek magazine. Someone wrote that, and that's the author. And the last name of the author, or in the case of an organization, the name of the organization, is your reference, plus the year. In this paper, they sometimes have the rest of the date. The year is all that's necessary. So if I wrote something that was published this year, it would be Bortle 2012. Here we see Fox News as a reference. Hills Emergency Forum as a reference. Okay. Now, we happen to have two Hills Emergency Forums here, a 2003 and a 2006. That's fine. If Hills Emergency Forum wrote two things in 2003 and we used them both, we might have Hills Emergency Forum 2003A and Hills Emergency Forum 2003B, because the citation is just going to, and the citation is how you note which reference you used in the text of the document. The citation is just the last name and the year. So every reference is listed by the last name and the year first, and that's how you cite them in the paper. There's a couple of ways to do these citations. In this particular paper, the author has stuck almost exclusively to the most simple type. At the end of the sentence that you are referencing, before the punctuation, in other words, the period comes at the end after the citation, you put in parentheses the last name and the date, Parker 1992. If I wanted to look up this passage myself that the student paraphrased from this author, I would go down to the reference list, find Parker 1992 right there, and now I have the rest of the reference, including the website, and I theoretically should be able to go straight to that website. Every citation needs a reference, and every reference needs a citation. You can't pump up your reference list with a bunch of stuff that you never cite in the paper, and you can't have citations in the paper that don't have a corresponding reference at the end. The references are listed alphabetically by the last name of the first author. So you see we start here with the C's and then go to the F's and then go to the G's. So back to the citations. Parker 1992. Here we have just a bunch of data. In total, here's how many acres were burned, how many people were dead, how many people injured, how many homes were lost, and we got that information from Routley 1991. Damage estimates range from 1.5 to 2.2 billion. Well, we have two references for that. So there's two citations. National Fire Protection Agency 2007, and then semicolon, Quan 2004. You may have a sentence that says, many authors agree that, and at the end of that sentence have 6 different citations all listed in one set of parentheses separated by semicolons. And that would show the reader that, indeed, there's a lot of support for that concept. You were able to list 6 different references. Other ways you could do these same citations, as long as you have the last name and the date appearing within the sentence, that would be okay. So you could say, Parker notes that despite these efforts, blah, 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 and then at the end it would just say in parentheses 1992. Or you could lose the parentheses completely and say, in 1992, Parker said, blah, 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 blah. So there's 3 basic ways you can work the citation into the text of the paper, either by just putting it in parentheses, by putting the author's last name in the text and just putting the date in parentheses, or by putting both the date and the author's last name in the text. Sometimes it's nice to mix it up a little bit so your paper reads a little better, so that it doesn't always follow exactly the same format. But the important concepts here, as I come to a close, is that your citations are the in-text landmarks that point to the references at the end of the paper. There's no need to put all the reference material in the text of the paper. You don't have to say, in his book titled How Things Burn, Parker in 1992 said, if I want to know the title of the book, it's in the references at the bottom. Don't muddle the text of your paper with all the reference material. You just have to have the name and the date. Now, when we talk about direct quotes and long quotes in another session, you will see that we sometimes have to put the page number from the reference in there. But all of these are instances where the person writing the paper paraphrased the author. This information is present in Parker 1992, but it isn't in there as a discrete sentence that I could go directly to this sentence. The author here paraphrased Parker. And that is what you will do most commonly, and that is what is most efficient. In another session, we'll talk about direct quotes, where you're going to put in quotation marks exactly what someone said, in which case your citation will also include the page number that you got that sentence from in the original text. Those are my basic thoughts on APA formatting, just in terms of general style, general design of the paper, and a few words about references and citation. I look forward to hearing, to speaking with you in a series of these short discussions. Thank you very much. You can contact me at bortlec, B-O-R-T-L-E-C, @philau.edu if you have any other questions. Thank you.